Since taking my art full-time, I've noticed some changes in my creativity over the past couple of years. I've noticed a resistance to creating that wasn't really there before. I've noticed that simply sitting down to play in my sketchbook is a battle with myself over whether or not I have the time, or the energy, or if I even want to in the first place. Art used to be this sanctuary for me. It was a way to wind down after a long day, a place to explore imaginary worlds and creatures, a hobby I could still participate in even when chronic illness was kicking my butt, which it often did. But when I made the decision to turn my art into a career, something shifted. In fact, I think something kind of broke. Slowly but surely, art became less of a sanctuary and more of a source of stress. During almost every creative session, there was this high pressure to perform. The pressure of making something worthy of an Instagram photo. The pressure of a camera sitting above my head recording every single mark I was making. The pressure of turning something I loved into a source of income. So art became my job rather than my passion. And truth be told, I didn't really think I loved it anymore. And if I'm being fully honest, I was so unhappy with myself and how I'd grown to view my creativity that I wasn't really sure that I was ever going to love making art again. I believed that there would now always be this unwelcome performance pressure and that art would never be a fully joyful place for me again. And what was especially frustrating was that I saw so many other artists that had turned their art into their career and were still so passionate about it. And that made me wonder, can that be true for me too? Can I learn to love my creativity again and continue to pursue it as my career? Or did I have to decide between the two? At the end of last year, I was really tired of how I felt about my creativity, and I noticed there were a lot of other artists that were fed up with their creative practices too. So I wrote a workbook to help artists nurture their creative practice, to fall in love with their art again, to heal from burnout, to develop their skills, to build up their discipline. Whatever intention they had, this workbook was designed to help them achieve it. So at the beginning of this year, I went through the workbook myself. I set the intention to fill 5 pages in my messy sketchbook each week for the month of January to nurture my love for creativity and a willingness to show up to it consistently. And I did. A little bit of that original childlike passion for art was sparked again. I was getting more excited about art, and I was spending a lot more time in my sketchbook. But I'm gonna be honest, I didn't really take the journal pages in the workbook super seriously.
I know, it's literally my own workbook. Why wasn't I putting in my full effort?
I don't know, I was lazy and apparently not fully committed. So for a while, my creative practice was more consistent and I was having a lot more fun with my art again. But life happens and I let other things start to take priority. Sometimes those were legitimate things that did need to be top priorities, and other times it was just kind of filler that was more convenient and more instantly gratifying than creating was. I let old habits of doom scrolling or mindlessly watching TV just slip back in. So that first month of nurturing was like digging a garden. I was pulling out the weeds, carefully planting the seeds, and watering them. But over time, I let the weeds grow again and take over what I'd so carefully nurtured. So fast forward to June. Over the months, my carefully tended garden became a weed-ridden land of chaos. Sketchbook sessions were few and far between. I had a mountain of art supplies that I hadn't touched in who knows how long, and my creativity felt stale. It felt stagnant. I'd crank out a piece every now and then to give me some footage for a YouTube video, but I wasn't really happy with my creativity. And that was incredibly frustrating. So in July, I decided to give the workbook another go, to set a new intention, to actually do the journal pages and work through my thoughts and emotions toward my art. I realized that my relationship with my creativity is like any other relationship in life. It takes effort. It takes sacrifice. It means showing up when it's really uncomfortable and working through the hard things and remembering that it isn't always going to feel good. So basically, I started from ground zero again, carefully digging the garden and pulling up the weeds, getting very messy and very uncomfortable. So I had a bunch of old scraps of watercolor paper and sketchbook paper and Bristol board, all just sitting in the back of my portfolio folder thingy. So I set the intention to create one piece of art every day on these old scraps of paper using any medium I wanted, creating anything I wanted. The intention was to, again, nurture my love for creativity and a willingness to show up for it consistently. I had lost the love and discipline required to fully embrace my creativity, to show up to it when it's hard and when I don't feel like it. I'd also really boxed myself into this mindset that my art had to have a specific niche or a style, something everyone could see and recognize as mine. But that mindset made me feel like I wasn't allowed to explore any other mediums or subjects in my artwork. That because I'm most known for painting with gouache, I couldn't create anything using my dip pen and inks, even though I really love those tools. Or because I don't typically paint birds, that I shouldn't quote-unquote
waste my time
painting one. But for July, I wanted to give myself the space to explore. Full creative freedom. To use any medium, to paint or draw or sketch anything, to spend 10 minutes on a piece or 4 hours on it. All I had to do was make something. So I started the intention off with the little ink and watercolor fox illustration. I'd really been missing my dip pen, and I was ready to dust it off. I played around with different swoopy shapes in the fur, used a complementary color palette that I really love, and of course, some of those little dotty spotty bits, because they make me happy. I simply showed up and made something because I wanted to. No grand end goal in mind. I didn't even have to show it to anybody if I didn't want to. And you know what? I had the most fun I'd had in a long time. I even liked the little mini swatch and mark cards. I feel like they became like their own little art pieces. So as I journaled that day, 4 very important words showed up. Excitement, passion, joy, and alive. Even though I had developed this almost bitterness toward my creativity, I realized something. The creativity wasn't dead. It just needed to be woken up again. The passion for it needed to be woken up. And with this first piece, it started to. I felt more creatively alive than I had in I don't know how long. So with such a successful first day, I was really excited for the next one. Just popping in to share that we're on the final days of the big summer sale in my shop. Everything from stickers to courses to prints to keychains, you can save 20% on all of it using the code SummerSale24. And yes, this includes the handy dandy nurture workbook that I've been talking about in this video. As always, every order comes with a freebie or 2, and every order is Annie Jane approved. So if you've been wanting to snag something from my shop, now is the perfect time. And without further ado, let's get back to creating. So on day 2, I realized I hadn't painted baubles in a while, and I also hadn't gotten out my gouache in a while. I'd been pretty sick for most of May and June, and I just hadn't really had the energy for getting out my gouache, so I decided to get gouache and paint one of my very favorite Marikey Meadow characters. It had also been a while since I'd done a food painting, so I painted a little cookie as well. Painting baubles always puts me in this really good headspace. I think because he's part of the Marikey Meadow, painting or sketching him is always a really good reminder of the joy that should be behind my creativity. A reminder that the result isn't the reward, the act of creating is. That if I'm not creating from a place of love and genuine joy, then really, what's the point? The first week was a little funky as far as the journaling went. I didn't end up journaling every day, partially because we were visiting family over the weekend, so I didn't have access to the pages on my computer. But honestly, I also just missed a couple days in there too, simply because I didn't make it a priority. I didn't fully invest myself till a little bit later on, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty disappointed with myself about that. I really wish I had those pages to look back on now and know how I felt about what I'd created on each of those first days. Hindsight's 2020. So for the third day, I needed something a little bit more low-key, so I decided to do a simple sketch of the little bandana girl squatting on the ground to hold a butterfly. She's another one of my go-to characters for sketching when I don't already have an idea in mind. She's another character that I just find very grounding to paint or to draw. She reminds me of the things in life that are important to me. The importance of spending time in nature, of taking care of things, of loving the in-between mundane moments. So like I said, the first week was a little bit weird since we were out of town for the weekend, but I did bring along my art supplies to be able to keep up with my intention. I got out my multi-liners and my Copic markers after a very, very, very long hiatus from both of them. So with the multi-liner pen drawings, I began to develop a much deeper love for sketching with pens. But we'll dive into that more in one of the next videos. So even though I don't have pages for every day I created something during that first week, I did complete the set of weekly review journal pages for the first week. The overwhelming vibe throughout those pages was passion. That first week was so creatively fulfilling because I released myself from all of the creative boundaries and let go of the negative mindsets that I'd had previously. I looked at creativity as if it was a stranger that I wanted to get to know as a friend, starting from ground zero. I simply let myself create and have fun. I used mediums I'd forgotten I enjoyed, sketched whatever came to mind, and met my intention each day. So one of the questions in the weekly review pages is, how has your creative practice improved this week? And my answer for the first week was this: I feel looser when I create and much more full of ideas. I don't feel so bogged down by outside influences, and I've just been making what I want to make. So during this time, I was also taking a break from Instagram. Partially because I noticed it was a really big time sink for me, partially because I was so overwhelmed by everyone else's ideas, and partially because it just didn't really seem like it was beneficial for my business at all. So once I deleted the app, I was no longer bombarded by everyone else's styles and ideas. I could just sit and explore my own. Not to mention, I also had a lot more free time for creativity. Now you might be thinking,
Wow, Allie, that all sounds really, really great. Your relationship with creativity was totally healed in the first week, and art hasn't been a struggle at all since, right?
Wrong. Please do not let me paint this experience as something it's not. This was just week one. Truthfully, I was riding a bit of an emotional high that first week. I was so excited to be excited about art again, and showing up each day to create was fairly easy. I was very, very motivated. I liked everything I made that week, and the process for each piece was relatively stress-free. But what about the days when you don't feel like showing up? The days where something comes up and you have to pivot? The days when the creative process is incredibly frustrating or you don't like what you made? Because inevitably, those things happen. Life isn't perfect, and we're gonna face a lot of imperfection and frustration in our creative practice. Although this first week was riding the roller coaster to like that peak of passion and
Sheer awesomeness,
there were a lot of shooting down into the valley of sadness and frustration moments ahead. I faced every emotion during the month of this intention. I experienced all the peaks and valleys and the feelings that come with them. And we'll dive deeper into those in the upcoming videos. And speaking of upcoming videos, this is actually going to be a 6-part series. I'll have 5 videos, each showing the footage I have for that week of art and some of the specific things I faced during them, and then I'll have a final 6th video touring all of the art I made in July and wrapping up what I learned, how I grew as an artist, and what, hopefully, you can take away from my experiences. So if you were wondering where the other few pieces are for the first week, I'm sorry, but you'll have to wait for the final video. Anywho, thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed chatting with me about sparking passion in your creative practice again and watching me create these little art pieces. Huge thank you to the Cozy and Curious Creatives over on Patreon for helping to support my art journey. Y'all are so incredible, and it absolutely means the world to me that you want to come along on my journey. If you're interested in learning more about my Nurture workbook and how it can help you nurture your own creative practice, then head on over to watch this video next. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye guys!